Good morning. My name's Scott, and I came all the way here from Portland, Oregon. We have a TV show, and it's ruined us. So if you get offered a TV show, just say no. Save yourselves. We're going to start with a vocab word this morning, and that word is astronomy. It's like astronomy if you hated saying M's. Astronomy. And it's a Russian word, and it has to do with art, and it's the art of making what's familiar unfamiliar again. And I feel like as a person who's been in at least this practice of religion for most of my life, that a lot of things have become very familiar to me. A lot of the stories I've heard over and over and over again, and I already assume what I know about them. And so this morning, what I would like to do is unassume and unknow the story we just read. And instead of doing like an exegesis or an exposition of like all the points and applications we can take away from it, I want us to just enter into the mystery of this weird story and see how that transforms us. John, he wrote a book about Jesus. It's a bestseller. And he said, when we saw the glory of God, and it was full of grace and truth. And so when we talk about Jesus, we're talking about something of God that we can see, and we know that when we see it, it's full of grace and truth. So we're going to enter into the mystery of that grace and truth. And to do that, I need some volunteers. So I need a woman and a man to come up here with me to help me out with this. I know you're all jumping the gun right away. Let me bribe you with some free art afterwards. But we're not going any farther. Thank you.
It's my birthday.
It's your birthday? What's your name?
Jessica.
Hi, Jessica. You get to play the sinful woman. And then I need somebody to play Jesus. You're ready. You're ready to go. What's your name? Chris. Hey, thanks, Chris. Chris and Jessica, thank you. No speaking parts or anything. This is a story, yes, but it's a story about real people. And so I think we need some real people to kind of help us understand it a little bit. So we're going to do this. Typically, there's a weird thing where it says Jesus, like the woman comes behind Jesus and washes his feet. And that's weird because that's odd. But what happened in ancient times is when they sat around a table together, and we should do this again, it's very loungy, but they would have like a cushion and they would lay like this, and then their dirty feet would be behind them. And then they'd all be focused in the center. And so when it says she came behind him, it's because it's Jesus' feet. He's facing everybody and then behind it. So that's it. So to symbolize that, I'm not going to make you sit on the ground, Jessica. So Chris, can you just stand here? And Jessica, let's assume like just kind of a smaller stance, but I'm just going to have you sit there, okay, to give kind of dimension. So the most scandalous part about this passage is that Jesus forgives sins. What? I don't know. It doesn't mean anything to us because we don't live in a temple system anymore. Forgiving sins at this time meant that you went and got an animal, like a living pet, and you took it to the temple and you killed it, and that blood was the way that you got forgiven of sins. And preferably a lamb, but if you're poor or a professional artist, you would get a dove, a pigeon, all right? So, or a teacher. Bam, okay. Bringing the heat on her birthday. And the house that Jesus is at is the professional religious people who take part in this system, who make a living at doing this system, this whole kind of activity. And in this moment, Jesus says to this woman, "You're forgiven." And they're like, "What? No, that's not how it happens. That's not how we do things." And he's also assuming that he's the person in which that our sins are against, and that he is the one who can give out forgiveness. This is very, very scandalous. This is a scandalous moment that's probably misses us because we don't do these kind of temple rituals anymore, but it's very scandalous. He's saying lots here. And what he's saying most of all is that what God looks like, if we could see God, if he came in our midst, he would be handsome like Chris. But if he came in our midst, what we know about God is he's full of grace and truth. And what is grace? Grace is presence given. It's not presence withheld. It's presence given. Forgiveness, it's forgivingness. You know how you give yourself in a hug or give yourself in a high five? That's what it is. It's forgiveness. s. I don't know if I got the hyphens right. Maybe it's forgiven s. I don't know. That's what we know about God, is that he's for making this thing a clear path, and that is his work. The second thing that happens, our second part I want to enter into is, do you see this woman? So Chris, why don't you, Jessica, you get up. You're doing great. Have you considered acting? It's a wonderful future. Everybody turns out great in it. Chris, could you sit down? And then Jessica, you stand over here. So we're going to pretend like you're sitting, Chris, at the dinner, and Jessica's standing outside the house. So in ancient times, it was quite normal for the town religious leaders, if a visiting rabbi would come, they would say, come over to our house and we'll have a discussion. It's like a real live podcast, right? And it was also okay if people came to listen to that discussion. So it wasn't uncommon for visitors to be kind of around the house on the outside or inside, listening to this discussion of these really, really smart and religious people. So for the fact that this woman is here is not scandalous in itself, but it makes sense that why she would be there. But before we get to, why don't you come a little bit closer? Right there, like you're right on the edge. Before we get to this, he says to Simon, do you see this woman? Let's talk about projection for a second. So projection is the act of putting something of yourself onto the environment. The environment includes other people, animals, inanimate objects, and even our culture. Projection impacts the perception of ourselves and the world around us. We all do this, and there's positives and negatives of it. So positives, it helps us with creativity. It helps us like put ourselves in other people's places and empathize with that, and also helps us with empathy. So it helps us empathize with other people's stories. Those are some good things about projection. Now there's some negative things, and one of the main things is it's a way to disassociate or keep at distance something we find distasteful that we have rejected because it disrupts our self-image. So this woman is called a sinner. And it doesn't say anywhere in there that she is a lady of the night, a loose woman. It just says she's a sinner and she has many sins. Now, it's pretty, like, in looking at the text and looking at the Greek, it's okay to that's probably what her lot in life is. That's what she's doing. But it's interesting to me that we all of a sudden assume that that's what it would be. Franciscan friar Richard Rohr has this meditation that he does, or that he offers to people, and he says, because love is something that we grow into, you can't right away just go, I love Jesus. He says, you should start with a rock. Try loving a rock, because a rock can do nothing for you. A rock can't help you out anyway. I don't know, maybe throwing at giants or something. But, there's nothing for you there. But can you see the rock for what it is and love it for what it is? And then he's like, then move to a tree. Move to a tree, and can you love that tree for what it is? And then move to a person, and then move to God. He's like, there is a way that we grow in love. If we just go immediately to God, all we're going to do is put our projections on God, and that's how monsters are created, right? We've all met those throughout the history of humanity. So when we look at this woman, and he says, do you see this woman? She's labeled a sinner. And that probably means she's a prostitute. But I've never met an 8-year-old girl who said, one day I'd like to use my body to make a living. Prostitution isn't something you just fall down some stairs into. It is a lot of things go wrong in your life. A lot of things don't work out for you to be doing that. So this is not a woman who is just like a loose lady. This isn't a story about loose ladies. This is a story about a crushed woman, a broken woman. And the other thing about sinner, too, is that it just means heathen. Like, she's not the only sinner in that room. Like, everybody's a sinner in that room. But what heathen means is that she's not part of the Jewish ritual cleansing system. For many reasons. Maybe she's a Gentile. Maybe she's not Jewish. Maybe she can't afford it. One of the things that Jesus does when he comes and confronts the system that says it's forgiveness is that he's like, you're standing in the way of people coming to God. Like when he goes and overturns the temple, it says in 3 of the Gospels that he goes right for the dove sellers. Because he's like, you're the ones who are selling to the poor, and you're jacking up the prices, and you're not letting them come to do their sacrifices. You're standing in the way of the forgiveness. Stop it. This woman who is having to use her body to make a living might not be able to afford the ritualistic cleansing of that time. And Jesus, so when she hears Jesus speak, she's like, I don't know. All I know is that's where I need to go. So she knows that Jesus is going to meet at the Pharisee's house. I mean, listen. Imagine this moment. And she's standing on the outside. And a couple things. One is that it was very normal for people to wash each other's feet. That was a typical thing, especially a guest that would come in. It was like the standard thing. You'd give them a kiss, you'd wash their feet, you put some oil on it. That was typical. So she's like, what can I bring? I can bring some perfume. That's like all that I have. I can come to Jesus, and I can like give this little bit that I have him, and I can put it on his feet. And then she like walks in, and she's like, okay, there's Jesus' feet. And you don't have to, Jessica. I'll do this part. But no. You're so good. Just let's get you an agent. She walks in, and guess what? His feet aren't washed. And you can't, like, if you mix perfume with dirt, it doesn't work. And she didn't show up with a towel and a jug of water. And he's like, his feet's not washed. Like, I don't have anything except me. I don't have anything except my body. It's not good enough. Do you know what I do with my body? It's not enough. It's all that I have, though. And in her not enoughness, she does it. She washes his feet. And then they're like, do you know who she is? And Jesus sees her. The poet Rilke says this: the wound is the place where the light enters in. Often we think that we need to engage in our strength. But really it's the place of our not enough-ness, our woundedness, that something amazing happens. That actually the light gets into us as well. The light that's in the world, the light that's in God, it gets in us as well. And it does that work. And Jesus sees her and says, I see what she's doing. Do you see her? Because you didn't do any of that for me. She's loving me much. Okay, Chris, you stand up. Jessica, you come over here and sit on this chair. This is like top-notch acting class right now. Chris, come stand right here. And thank you again for awkwardly standing here with me. I get most bored with Jesus when I think about him this way, that he knows everything. Because have you ever had a conversation with somebody who knows everything? Like, imagine if you and Jesus were hanging out and he was like, tell me about your day. And then you started and he's like, I already know. That's not interesting. But it can happen when we imagine Jesus, that we imagine him as coming from heaven with a script. As if like there was some heavenly PR firm that was like, what should we say to convince everybody? Yeah, this is the thing. Say this tomorrow. And then Jesus shows up to the setting. He's like, hi, I'm here. I'd like to read this. Do you see this woman? No, he's a human being, physical, like Chris, in a room, in a world where politics is happening, military things are happening, relationship stuff is happening. He's in the midst of this world, seeing and interacting with the world. And the mystery of Jesus that they saw was like, we saw a person who was God too, but it's very mysterious. We're not sure how to describe it. But he lived a life like us. And where did his teaching come from? Was it not him witnessing the farmer planting seeds one day and being like, oh yeah, that's like what God does. I'm going to use that for later. Oh yeah, remember that time Tom, his son Kevin, ran away and like spent all his money, and then he came back and was like, make me a servant. Tom's like, no, I'm your dad. That was a good story. I should use that one day. Do you think he just came with a script of like heavenly things to say, or did he witness the world and he's going, don't you see that God's in this world at all times? He's in all of these stories and interactions, these moments of grace, these moments of love, that's God revealing himself to us. And when he gathers his disciples together and they have dinner one night, and he knows that he's going to be arrested and taken to the cross, and he's like, what could I do to represent love, what it means to be my disciple? Before he starts the dinner, he takes the form of a servant and he washes their feet. And then he says, do you know what I did for you? I've given you an example. I've given you a pattern, a sign of what it means to be a follower of me, that they'll know that you loved one another. Where did he see that? Because 2 days before, Mary, sister of Martha and Lazarus, did that to him at their house. Where did Mary hear about that? It was from this woman. I ran this by my friend who's like a PhD and written 8 books. And I was like, am I being a heretic? He's like, no, go for it. It's great. Do you understand? Like, I think what gets me in this story is like, can we astonish God? Can we catch him off guard? There are times when people come to Jesus and say things and he's like, whoa, look at this. I did not see that coming from that person who's not a Jew or that person who's a Gentile. He's very caught off guard by people at times, by how they respond. It's not somebody who's like, I already know how all this pans out, but I'm interacting with this world and you. Chris, thanks for your help. Jessica, thanks for your help. I appreciate it. Let's give him a hand for helping out. Can't wait to see you in Transformer 7. It's going to be awesome. Great franchise. When I listen to somebody speak, the thing that I say about them is like, why are you up here talking? I don't say it to their face. I say it inside. I'm not a monster. I'm like, why are you up here speaking? Are you a professional religious person so you have to say this stuff? Or has this done something to you? And I have been sitting with this for 3 weeks, and it's wrecked me. And I'm up here because I don't know if I believe this. But I'm starting to. That my response to God could actually do something, that it's not known, but it could be astonishing, and that maybe it would be something that is used to help mold and transform others and others. May myself and you, maybe we enter into the mystery of a God that's full of grace and truth, who is astonished by us as humans. And may we see our lives not just as things that are already figured out, but places to interact with the divine. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.